Welcome back to Hoffmann-Photography. My name is Rainer, and in today's video we'll talk about light and why the quality of the light is way more important than brightness. Newcomers to photography often confuse good light with bright light. And that's why they like shooting on a sunny day when the sky is blue. On the other hand, experienced photographers know that the brightness of the light is only secondary. Much more important is the quality of the light. Now, photography is not possible without light, but as soon as there's just a little bit of light, you can get started. The brightness of the light is only important if you want to photograph handheld or if you want to shoot moving objects without motion blur. In these cases, of course, a certain brightness is required for the necessary short exposure times, assuming that you don't want to increase the ISO number too much. In all other cases, low light conditions can always be compensated by a correspondingly long exposure time. In any case, it is not the light intensity or the brightness that makes or breaks a picture. It's the light quality. So what exactly is light quality? There are four aspects. First, the type of light, meaning direct light, directional light, or diffuse light. Then there is contrast, and there is a direction of the light relative to the camera. And last, there is the color of the light. Now, just let's have a look at some examples and it will become quite clear. With diffuse light, there is no preferred light direction. The subject is evenly illuminated from all sides. The objects cast only faint and very soft shadows, and the contrast is moderate. As a rule, this low contrast lighting makes no special demands on the exposure metering. Outdoors, such conditions prevail on overcast or rainy days when sunlight is scattered by cloud cover. Photos taken in very diffuse light look calm and balanced. In the picture of the two ladies on the park bench, the soft light supports the quiet and peaceful mood of the scene. When a subject is illuminated by a point light source, such as the sun, the conditions are completely different than with diffuse light. Point light sources cast hard-edged, comparatively dark shadows. This is easily seen in the shadow cast by the airplane being refueled in the middle of the desert. The contrast is very high and there are specular reflections on smooth surfaces. Directional light is well suited for technical objects and modern architecture. Because of the high contrast, however, precise exposure is important so that details are not lost in either the highlight or shadow areas. Often, photos taken in harsh light require brightening of the dark areas of the image in post-processing, as in this case. Otherwise, the shadows will appear visually much too dark. Diffuse or directional light also has an effect on the color rendition. In diffuse light, the colors are not as vibrant, but finely differentiated with many different shades of orange, yellow, and red in this case. In direct light, on the other hand, the colors are very bold, but not as finely differentiated. Hardly any photographer can escape the effect of a subject with very high contrast. Unfortunately, the resulting photos are quite often disappointing, because the camera perceives reality quite differently than our brain. This is a very busy scene with lots of small details. The high contrast and the patchy light breaks up the scene into many individual areas that no longer seem to relate to each other. It pretty much looks like a patchwork quilt. In my opinion, high contrast works best with simple graphic compositions like this one or this one. Front lighting is the simplest form of lighting. The subject is lit from the front, meaning the sun or whatever light source you have is at your back. Images with front lighting have few or no shadows and consequently look quite flat, like the mountain range in this image. For landscapes, front lighting is perhaps the least flattering light of all. For front lighting to work nicely, the subject should have bold colors and or good graphic design, as this facade of a house in Provence with the green shutters. Or this bright red pickup truck. Side lighting is perhaps my favorite kind of lighting. In this image of a detail formed by waves on a beach, the side lighting really makes the image look three-dimensional. Some of the edges are very brightly lit, while others are in deep shadow. It also highlights the texture of the sand. With front lighting, this detail would look rather bland. And look at this. For wildlife photographers, it can hardly get any better than this. The side lighting and the warm yellowish light of the early morning sun make this image really special. Backlighting lets translucent objects like these, whatever they are, I don't even know what they are called in German. Anyway, backlighting lets them glow. These types of objects work best with a dark background, like here. Light metering can be difficult though. That large, dark background may cause overexposure if you are not careful, and that would result in blown out highlights. This little guy has a glowing halo around his body thanks to the backlight. Again, light metering is critical to retain the details in the fur without blowing out the highlights. Or you can go for a complete silhouette. The sun was just below the horizon and the image was taken with a pretty long focal length so that the sky is completely yellow and orange. Daylight is most of the time colorless, like in this example. On a sunny summer day in the northern hemisphere, this is the case roughly between 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning and about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. In the late afternoon and shortly before sunset, the light gets more yellowish. After sunset, the light has a bluish hue, as in this example. Only parts of the sky and the reflections in the highest buildings are still yellowish. This time of the day is therefore often called the blue hour. Candlelight and incandescent light is quite yellowish in appearance. Modern LED light sources, however, can of course have very different colors from yellowish to bluish. One special case is mixed lighting. This scene is partly illuminated by an incandescent light source with yellowish light and partly by a window behind the camera from which natural daylight illuminates the front of the scene. Compared to the yellow light from the desk lamp, the daylight is quite bluish, which results in this color shift from yellow to blue. You may or may not like this effect. I quite like it, at least in this image. The term light quality seems to imply that there is good light and bad light. And perhaps you've heard that you shouldn't take pictures around noon because the light is harsh and contrasty and therefore meets the definition of bad light. And many photographers indeed leave their cameras in the bag for most of the day. But in my opinion, there is no such thing as bad light or good light. But, and it's a big but, there can be light that is particularly good or particularly bad for a particular subject. Again, here are some examples. For a portrait, the harsh midday light is usually unsuitable. Very dark shadows form under the eyes and chin and under the nose, and unsightly reflections appear on the skin. In addition, people tend to squint their eyes because of the harsh light. These factors usually result in a less than flattering portrait. On the other hand, midday light can support the effects of the image. For example, the photo of the small school in a California ghost town shows how difficult life must have been under the hot and relentless desert sun. And the harsh midday light in this image of the European Parliament building in Strasbourg, Alsace, emphasizes the steel and glass construction of this strictly functional building. I hope I could convince you that the amount of light, or the brightness, is far less important than the quality of the light. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.